Welcome to the TokenMarket.net podcast. I am your host, Gavin Knight. Thank you for tuning in. Check out our site for digital asset research, a calendar of upcoming events, and many future upcoming releases. Our podcast features team members of projects in the cryptocurrency space to help shed light on their developments. Just because a project is on our podcast doesn't mean we recommend investment, so always research and engage wisely. I'm here with James Drake, CEO of Embermine. They're doing an ICO on April 13th. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how you found blockchain technology and how you
Mhm.
melded that together with your idea?
Okay. Thank you for having me on, first of all, and hello to everyone out there. And I'm not a blockchain guy. I'm not a blockchain industry guy. In fact, I didn't know anything about blockchain before a year ago. I'm an industry guy. I was in the publishing industry, and I was very frustrated with how much friction existed at the independent and freelance levels of all creative industries from the beginning. I've always been frustrated with it, but in the publishing industry, it seemed particularly harsh, especially with all the advances now in enabling individuals to be able to publish their own works. It still was incredibly difficult to get a proper team of people together to publish a professional looking book. One of the reasons why publishing companies are very, very popular right now, or have always been popular, is the ability to be able to give access to the author certain tools and tricks of the trade and skills that are necessary to create a professionally produced book. With the boom in self-publishing, obviously quality levels suffered, significantly over that time because people didn't have access to a great editor or a great cover artist or an excellent publicist. There just were all sorts of things that were really creating some issues for authors. So they would start wanting to engage in these professional behaviors, and in order to do that, they would have to usually pay out of pocket several $1,000s just to even have the opportunity to have access to people that do these highly skilled elements that they require. Um, and being a self-published author, most of them were paying out of their own pocket. They're paying out of their life savings with the dream of being a successful author. And some of them made it, and sadly, a great many people spent lots and lots of money to really get nowhere. And in some cases, some of them were victimized by bad circumstances where they would, choose the wrong artist or the wrong editor who ultimately never did the work and took all their money. So there's all these really risky behaviors, really risky situations for, freelance and independent authors and creators alike to work in that. And on the flip side, the artists didn't have it much easier either. Those artists, of course, had all kinds of problems with, doing work for authors who ultimately never published work. Now, in some cases, they got paid for that and that was fine. But in other cases, it constituted a big waste of time on their end. And then in some cases, they also would do the work on promise of some sort of payment that never came through. Or, for that matter, promise on payment on a percentage of sales, and then they never would be able to verify or audit with any degree of accuracy. So there was all this tension that existed in there, and as I was dealing with my own frustrations with the publishing industry, I just kind of said to myself, there's got to be an easier way. Why couldn't I make it in Amazon, for example, where I could just go ahead and peg certain individuals for a percentage of all the sales that came from Amazon? Why couldn't I do that? Why wouldn't that be an accessible idea for people? And so I started thinking of an idea of how to create this environment, how to create a platform that would allow individuals to be able to create um, smart contracts, in essence, contracts between each other that guaranteed payment channels and revenue share between each of the individuals that are involved in any particular project. And I was looking at it originally from the perspective of how to do it with current existing technology. And the problem was is that I always got to a certain point where I'm like, well, that's the problem. Or that's a problem. Or that's a problem. And ultimately, it came down to that, having 100% guaranteed authenticity of each transaction that occurs, and knowing that the books can't be cooked in any way, and knowing that there's no way to hide a transaction from somebody, or what have you, or for that matter, to create fake transactions, either way, um, really was intriguing to me. And I was trying to think of a way to do that when my nephew, Garrison Breckenridge, who's another co-founder of Embermine, had been studying about Ethereum and learned about them and said, well, have you looked at blockchain? I said, well, I know kind of what it is. I knew of it. I've heard of Bitcoin, obviously, before. And I said, well, I haven't really looked at it. And I looked at the Ethereum website, and about 15 minutes later, I was furiously writing and sketching out ideas and thoughts. And I spent the next 2 months, basically 18-hour days, doing absolutely nothing but studying the blockchain environment and talking to everyone who would be willing to bend an ear towards me, just to ask them questions and learn about the potentials of this great project or a product. And so that's how I got into blockchain. And for the last year, that's been my life. I've been doing absolutely nothing but learning how to interact with the various blockchains that are in existence out there, the cryptocurrencies and their roles in everything. And it was through that, and as well as my prior experience working both the internet and application development, where I slowly kind of coalesced into what we know now as the Embermine environment.
So, besides publishing, what other types of activities do you see people using Embermine for?
Um, I mean, obviously, there's lots of different use cases. You could literally use this for anything that would be project centered. So, for example, you could use it for something as simple as writing a book, like the example I used before. You could use it to build a house, where you're your own general contractor, and you can assign smart contracts to various people who are going to finish various roles. You could do it in the case of video production, or even TV, or even something like a YouTube channel that would allow you to be able to create opportunities for various contributors in the project to be able to share in revenues on a video share platform. There's really, honestly, the use cases are nearly endless. I came up with like 23 of them just in the first couple of hours. I was just thinking about it, like how it could be used. Another interesting one is something like almost like like a retainer type services, like lawyers or even like a mechanic or somebody like that, where they're getting paid on a consistent basis as a retainer over a particular period of time. And if anybody comes in with a claim, against that retainer, against you and that services, they can just be added into the overall value of the smart contract itself. There could be stipulations in there and how those are paid, and how they're paid over time, and how they relate to the payments that have already made up to that point. There's all kinds of things that you can do with it. And the key thing really is that we're not using blockchain as the core of the environment. There's a data layer, and then there's a transactional layer. The transactional layer will be the blockchain that we're developing. And then the data layer will obviously be this decentralized data that exists for all these projects. And that's going to be important as well, is that not only that it's secure, but that it's using the blockchain both as a transactional layer as well as a security layer. That helps, make all the data not only available to everyone on the system itself, but also makes it so where the data on it is confirmed and managed properly.
What do I receive if I'm staking these tokens? I understand you're going to have 100 million tokens issued from the beginning. So how do stakeholders receive rewards?
Stakeholders receive rewards a royalty off of the sales that are done on the Embermine environment for particular services. So the Embermine environment will not charge any transactional fees that occur between individual members of a smart contract. So, for example, if you're an artist and you have 3 people on there and you are transacting all these microtransactions between each individual, they actually accumulate over a course of a day and then are transmitted back and forth without incurring any transaction fees. Transactions between the individual taking the money out of the environment, which our embers are currently we're having it pegged to the US dollar, which means as they transact and they collect these embers at any time, they can withdraw that money and exchange it for the fiat currency, the US dollar. Every time that happens, there's a transaction fee that occurs that goes to the Embermine project itself. The Embermine project is the top project in the Embermine platform, and that is literally the series of smart contracts that run the entire environment and enable people to be able to create their own projects off of that. Anytime anyone below creates a smart contract or other various services like entity creation, stuff like that, they have to pay a small fee to do those tasks, and those fees are collected by us, and then a percentage of that is sent as a royalty on to all the stakeholders of the Embermine token.
And your tokens are going to be issued on Ethereum, but you're going to be launching your own blockchain.
Yes.
What's the advantage of launching your own blockchain to using Ethereum, and what kind of technology will that blockchain be using?
That's a really good question. The main reason why we're going to be splintering off of Ethereum is obviously we want to have access, to language and to the backbone that allow us to be able to create the smart contract platform that we're going to be using. Why we will be migrating eventually from that, we'll be deviating from that, is because we don't necessarily want to be beholden to any changes that occur on Ethereum's blockchain or their contract language that may be in contrast to what we want to be able to do with the platform itself. So a little bit of autonomy is required there in order to be able to make this system that's going to have to be very highly customized to be able to do all the various features on it that we want. So over the next 3 years is the time frame I've been putting it at. We'll be slowly gathering in our own internal unit of blockchain experts and slowly working towards customizing our blockchain to be our own. What kind of features will it have when it's there? Well, the biggest one is the royalty share feature for stakeholders, because in this particular case, the combination of regulatory issues as well as compliance and such make it very, very difficult in the United States to have that kind of atmosphere within your blockchain environment. And so we're going to be working really, really hard and really closely with the ever-changing regulatory landscape that's out there to finding a way where we can make sure that works. And because we're doing that just that part all by itself is a very difficult thing for me to be able to elaborate on, as far as what technology we're going to be using, because that's still, we're undergoing discerning that right as we speak and what that exactly means.
So what is your roadmap like for Embermine? Do you have an idea of when the blockchain will be live and when people can interact and start using it for publishing and the other use cases?
Yes. Our plan for that is going to be probably late August, early September for minimum viable product release, and the beginning of our beta, and then heading into version 1.0 launch in late January.
And what will 1.0 look like? What kind of things will be ready at that point?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. What was the last part? You kind of garbled out a second.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
what will the 1.0 release look like? What sort of features will be available?
Okay. At 1.0, you'll be able to do, the most basic functions like being able to establish your unique identity, be able to create the various entities that you will use to interact within the project itself, be able to create a project, hire collaborators, and be able to create products for sale on the Embermine marketplace. And you'll also be able to create what's called a payment channel, a payment capture channel, which will allow you to connect your project and the smart contracts within it to outside marketplaces like Amazon, iTunes, Smashwords, your own website, anywhere that you're actually utilizing that technology on. Anything that pays revenue or creates a revenue payment, you'd be able to capture and connect it to within reason. They have to have an API that actually is accessible, but enable you to be able to capture those funds and channel them into your smart contracts, allowing them to enforce the revenue share on those products as well.
And tell us about the ICO. What will the money go to, and when does it start? And what are your goals? What's your minimum or maximum goals for that?
Okay. Our minimum goal right now is set at about 5,000 Ether, which is about 250,000 depending upon the price of Ethereum, which changes by the minute. But and in our max right now, it sits at right close to about 5 million US dollars, 200,000, 200,000 or so, or no, sorry, 100,000 Ethereum. We're the 90% of the money is going actually towards the combination of salaries and license fees that we'll have to pay in order to get access to the various technologies and developers that we need in order to move forward. We have already verbal agreements with several different companies to provide identification services, blockchain and smart contract services, as well as some transaction confirmation services as well that we'll be using as our back-end technology to be able to hold that. Our staff that we have on hand right now will be the primary application development team. So the application that we're developing is going to be the fabric that's going to connect all of the background blockchain and smart contract technologies that we're going to be using from a variety of companies and identity services to provide that trusted blockchain layer that we need. And then obviously some marketing has got to go into place because we're not selling the product to blockchain people. We're actually engaging with the marketplace itself, and trying to look for mass adoption. We will obviously have to undergo a pretty significant advertising campaign to ensure that we get plenty of beta users in on the project right away, and also to start building our numbers early on in the beginning of 2018. So primarily, most of that's just, most of the money is just going towards development to get this project up and running. We figure that we can have minimum viable product with the team that we have in place and with the agreements we have in place with various parties out there, that we can get minimum viable product by September for about $250,000.
Great. So is there anything else you'd like to share about the team or maybe partnerships and things that Embermine is working on?
Sure. We've been talking to a variety of companies, in ID services, companies like Socure and ID.me, as well as Confirm. As far as transaction services are concerned, we've been talking to several different companies. CoinFirm is one of them that we've spoken with. And then for smart contract and blockchain technologies, been talking to both Consensus and Monax, in providing assistance in those areas.
Great. Well, look forward to your ICO, and thanks for joining us. It's CEO James Drake of Embermine, and the sale once again is April 13th, 11 a.m. Central Time.
All right. Thank you very much for having me on, Gavin, and I look forward to hearing more of your podcasts in the future.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.